Greetings again, everybody. Hello and welcome to the F4 Australian Championship. Once again, taking place here at the Sepang International Circuit. We're on vacation and we have worked our way to the beautiful city of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. What an amazing race circuit and one of the most exciting championships in the F4 pedigree. We have got so many fantastic competitors on the grid. It's all change in the championship. After the first 9 races of the year, from the first 2 weekends that we had at the Bend Motorsport Park and here from Tailem Bend in South Australia, moving on then to the Sydney Motorsport Park at Eastern Creek in New South Wales. It had been all one-way traffic for one team and one driver. It had all been about AGI Sport and their young man James Pizique winning the first 9 races of the season with 6 pole positions all the way through that category. However, things are very different as that man, James Pizique, that you see on your screen, is now in a very different situation here this weekend as Evans GP have invaded the F4 Australian Championship and it has become a very different playing field. In the first 5 positions yesterday were 4 drivers that had not raced in the championship over the course of the season. So it shows you how different things have become over in the last 24 hours at least. Hello everybody, Jake Satson here with you once again. It'll be a fantastic second race and it will definitely be an interesting challenge for the competitors hoping for another clean and exciting battle out on the course. You're going to get to see a really interesting challenge for all of the contenders out there as Tiago Rodriguez has managed to secure pole position for this second race of the weekend based on the fastest laps set during yesterday's first race. It means as well that he'll be joined on the front row of the grid by Cooper Webster, who actually lined up 4th in the race yesterday and has been able to work his way through to 2nd position after a brilliant duel all the way through the race with James Pizique. It was a fantastic run, and that is how he was able to get himself into 2nd position. The grid for this race based off the finishing positions from race 1. 4th on the grid then, that's going to be an interesting one for young Costa Taparis, who made his F4 Australian bout yesterday. There he is in the number 43, just going through their reconnaissance laps at the moment to warm themselves up, ready for the action. This is actually Costa Taparis' first appearance in the championship in 2024. So it'll be an interesting and exciting battle for all of the contenders out there as we get ourselves prepared and ready for the exciting battles that we are set to have. It's a little bit of an all change at this point of the season, because not only are we here at the Sepang International Circuit, a very different venue from what we were used to seeing, but also we were supposed to have a race weekend at Queensland Raceway on the 13th and 14th of July. That was sadly postponed. It's going to be replaced later in the season was the last word we had on the subject. So we're still waiting for news on that 5th and final weekend in the championship to be declared. But this is where we are on the Petronas Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia. The longest straight on the circuit is the Formula 1 straight, which is very nearly a kilometre in length. And as you can see, the competitors are just setting themselves up on the dummy grid, which is the back straight parallel to the start-finish line. And so that's where the support race grid is obviously formed up at Sepang International Circuit. The teams and drivers are actually based in the pit lane just off to our left, because the main Grand Prix pit lane is currently occupied by the Malaysian Sports Car Championship as well as the Thailand Super Series. So they have the pit garages for Grand Prix racing past. We have the support race grid. So the drivers are making their way then to the starting grid for this one. It's going to be a really exciting battle. And after yesterday, it'll be a really exciting situation for all of the contenders out there. So all of the drivers getting themselves ready for an exciting battle. An interesting statistic that's pointed out on our stream by Time Certain Clock on Twitter. Rain around 78% chance for the end of the Malaysian Championship race, and it could still be there around the start of race 3 of F4 this afternoon. So could be a very interesting one as all of the contenders are getting themselves up ready for the exciting showdown that we are set to see in this second of 3 races this weekend. So it'll be Tiago Rodriguez and Cooper Webster, as we mentioned, on the front row of the starting grid. James Pizique in 3rd place, the first time all year that he has not taken a race victory. He still managed to get it through for 3rd position, beaten comprehensively by the 2 Evans GP drivers, Tiago Rodriguez of Macau and that man, Cooper Webster of Australia, who has, although it's the Australian Championship, he's not been racing all season. He's been racing in the United Kingdom in GB3 I do believe, over the course of this year. Of course, that's not far away from having him taken his F4 Indian Championship title last season. I was there in person to see him do the deed on the Madras International Circuit, and it was a fantastic campaign from young Cooper Webster. Here is James Pezic, who has had a very busy year in 2024, not just in the F4 Australian Championship, but at the beginning of the year as well in the F4 UAE Championship. He also ended up competing out in the UK at various points as well. There is Costa Taparis lining up in fourth position of the starting grid. He actually raced with the Evans GP team in the United Arab Emirates at the start of the season in Formula Regional Middle East. So good to see him back here again in F4 Australia, just to get that little bit of extra track experience, and on a very different race circuit as well, the Sepang International Circuit, a very complex one to get used to. The man fifth position on the starting grid, there he is, Kai Dadianani. What an incredible journey he's had to the world of single-seaters. He was racing on iRacing, competing against various different race drivers, including Dan Wells, the very talented sports car driver from Hong Kong. And Kai Dadianani beat him. Dan Wells couldn't quite understand how someone with no experience that he'd never heard of was able to beat him, and was so impressed with his driving style that he got in contact with him and he said, look, I'd like to coach you. I think you've got some talent. And so he took up the story, and the rest, as they say, is history. Nicholas Starty, the man who is currently second in the championship standings here in the F4 Australian Championship, finished sixth position yesterday. He has not failed to finish a race in the top six all season long. He's had 5 second places and 3 thirds. His points tally is on 153. So he is not that far away from clinching second position in the championship ahead of Sebastian Amadio. There is Inigo Anton, the rookie driver who made his debut in the championship yesterday and got his first win in the championship yesterday. A fantastic performance and a great return for his efforts to get the job done on his first appearance in the championship, managing to get ahead and finish ahead of both Seth Gilmore and Imogen Radburn, who are the fellow rookies in the field. So excellent performance and display from Inigo Anton. He should be joined, obviously, in that team at Black Arts by Arjun Chaheda, the Indian driver who sadly fell ill and was not able to continue the season, to continue the weekend. There is Sebastian Amadio, third in the Drivers' Championship, 116 points scored after his 8th place finish yesterday. But before that, he had got 2 third places and an incredible 6 fourth position finishes, along with a 5th place in the first weekend at the Bend Motorsport Park. There is Seth Gilmore, the man who is fighting for the rookie title, currently leads that after having started the season in a flamboyant and victorious fashion, winning the first 5 races of the Rookies Championship at the Bend Motorsport Park. But then the second, Imogen Radburn, got the hang of racing in the Rookies Championship. In the 6th race of the season, she took her first win in Rookie and has not stopped winning since then, although she did have a spin yesterday to finish 3rd in the rookie points. But that's not to take away from her ability. She did get an overall podium at Sydney Motorsport Park, not only taking the win, but also the top 3 on the rostrum. So a very talented driver. What you have to remember, of course, is that this circuit at Sepang is a very different challenge to what the drivers have been used to at the Bend and at Eastern Creek. Very different race circuits indeed, and a very different style of driving. And that's why it's been added to the calendar, because it essentially gives the drivers a different challenge to take on over the course of the season. It's one thing to race at F4 Australia in their home country, but to add something a little bit different, a little bit unique to their battle for the title, it definitely makes things a little bit more interesting. And of course, having a 3rd different race circuit in the calendar means that this championship is eligible for the FIA Super License points as well. You have to have 3 different circuit layouts over the course of the year, unless you get special dispensation, as was the case in last year's F4 Indian Championship, when there were only 2 circuit layouts, which was the short national and the international configuration of the Madras International Circuit. It would, of course, very easily have been 3 configurations. In fact, it would have been 4 had it not been for the cancellation of the Hyderabad Street Race and the postponement of the Chennai International Circuit race as well, based on the big flood that we had in Chennai at the tail end of November. No such problems for that in Australia this year, and the F4 Championship has been very much one-way traffic for James Pezic up until yesterday, when Tiago Rodriguez made his debut with the Evans GP team in F4 Australia, and they absolutely eclipsed the race. They pulled well clear, with Cooper Webster having a race-long duel with James Pezic. It went the way of Cooper Webster finishing in 2nd position. Costa Taparis and Kai Dadianani finished up in the top 5, and Kai Dadianani, of course, will be taking pole position for race 3 a little bit later on today. Sixth position in that earlier race yesterday was Nicola Starti in front of Inigo Anton, and then Sebastian Amadio, Seth Gilmore, and Imogen Radburn completing the rookie podium and the race finishers. It'll be fascinating to see how it all goes as we continue in the situation for race 2. Wesman makes an interesting observation. Why does Radburn have a different livery to the other AGI drivers? That's actually a really interesting point. But the drivers do have different commercial partners and different commercial deals that they carry through the course of the season. The drivers in the rest of the team, AGI Sport, their partners and their sponsors have basically negotiated deals which allow them to keep the AGI Sport livery. Clearly, Imogen Radburn's commercial partner, not only does she get sponsored to race as part of the deal, but they also have a fillet perhaps in the contract that basically states that they run in the race sponsors livery rather than the AGI Sport livery. There's all sorts of commercial deals that take place through the world of motor racing, and as long as you adhere and accede to the requests of your commercial partners, then all is fine and dandy. Clearly, with Imogen Radburn's commercial partner, part of that deal is to ensure that the car is in the livery and colours of her particular commercial partner. It doesn't always make sense, but certainly even as low as Formula 4, these contracts and negotiations happen. You expect something like that to happen in the world of perhaps, say, IndyCar or even in GT racing for one car to be a different colour scheme to F4. But surprisingly, those sort of commercial deals do happen at this level as well. And that's why Imogen Radburn's car is in a completely different colour scheme to her blue and yellow colleagues at AGI Sport. 5 drivers for the AGI Sport team, 3 for the squad at Evans GP. There should be 2 at Black Arts Racing, but on this occasion, sadly, there is only 1, as Arjun Jaheda is no longer competing due to an illness that struck him on Friday morning. And then there is the 1 competitor for Jam Motorsport, although officially it is registered as a privateer entrant. Interestingly, the Black Arts Racing team entry is not actually officially known as Black Arts Racing. It's actually known under the moniker of Axel Sports, and that is the young Filipino driver Inigo Anton. I think that's also to do with his commercial sponsor. Last minute checks then for Tiago Rodriguez. Hopefully that's not going to turn into a mechanical problem, as they're just doing the last couple of checks there at the very last moment, and you do get those last little crossing of the T's and dotting of the I's. Hopefully that's not going to turn into anything. 25 minutes on the live timing screen plus the additional lap. If you want to follow along with live timing, you can go to getraceresults.com and you'll be able to select from the drop-down menu the Sepang International Circuit. But that is bad news. Tiago Rodriguez is still on the grid with his mechanic as they go around for the formation lap. Well, it looks like Tiago Rodriguez, he's going to have more problems, and so too, we got another car that's left on the grid there, but that is the pole position sitter, Tiago Rodriguez, stalled out on the grid then. Well, that is not good. And so the pole position man, the dominant winner yesterday, Tiago Rodriguez, is being wheeled into the pit lane. That is the worst possible start to his defense of his race victory yesterday. So that gives the lead now on the pole position when they come back around to take up the starting grid on this part of the circuit to Cooper Webster. So James Pezik and Costa Taparis will essentially take up the second row of the grid. Costa Taparis and Kai Dadianani, then Nicolas Starti, Inigo Anton, who I'm not sure whether he's got going or not, Sebastian Amadio, Seth Gilmore and Imogen Radburn. I think Sebastian Amadio was almost left on the grid as well. I think he did manage to get circulating, but this is not good news for Evans GP. And the young man who took the victory yesterday, Tiago Rodriguez, the monster of Macau, has not been able to get off the starting grid. So the pole position sitter is in dire straits here at Sepang. This couldn't be worse for the youngster. Well, this is drama before the race has even got underway. Right, they're trying to push start the car. Now, if they can push start it, then he can join in the formation lap at the back of the field. But there is a problem trying to get him started again. He's not moving under his own power, as you can see. It looks like it might be a gearbox issue. He's having a difficulty trying to engage first gear there. Well, this is catastrophic. And all the fans who have tuned in from Macau and Hong Kong and Portugal as well are definitely not having the race they wanted. Rodriguez should be in pole position, but he's not. He's in the pit lane. Cooper Webster then will be alone on the front row of the grid. James Bezique and Costa Tapares on the second row. Kai Dadianani and Nicola Stati. Inigo Anton, Sebastian Amadio, and then Seth Gilmore and Imogen Radburn to complete the field. But will we have 10 starters or will we only have 9? Well, Thiago Rodriguez is desperately trying to get the car started. There we go. He's left the pit lane. So Thiago Rodriguez is now going to make his way into the Grand Prix pit lane to start the race from there in the hope that the engine doesn't die. The problem he's got is if the engine stalls when he's in pit road, there's nothing he can do about it to get it restarted because his mechanics are over on the support pit lane. So there is the pit lane entry line, and the marshals obviously waving him the yellow flags to go down the pit lane. He's got to wait at the foot of the pit lane for the start of the race. He will not have had any chance at all to warm up the tyres and brakes the way his colleagues have. So Thiago Rodriguez has got to start this race from the pit lane. Any chance of taking the win in race 2 seems to have evaporated, but stranger things have happened in F4 racing, and let's not forget the great pace that he had yesterday. He may be able to work his way back into position. So there he is waiting now at the end of the pit lane. He is praying that the engine stays alive, because if it dies now, all his mechanics are over in the support paddock, so he won't be able to restart again. So that's just a hope that he'll be able to get going. It looks like for the moment we will have 10 starters, but certainly not in the order we were supposed to have. That means that Cooper Webster inherits pole position, and the last time he did that in F4 racing, he came through for the victory when he was in the F4 Indian Championship at the tail end of last year. So we take a look at the wider shot there. There is Thiago Rodriguez in position at the foot of the pit lane. He'll have to wait till all of his opponents have got past him. Now looking through the field, I can't see Sebastian Amadio either. I think Amadio didn't get moving. Yes, Amadio's car has broken down somewhere on the circuit as well. So I think that's, oh no, we're just trying to see how many cars have we got. No, Amadio is there in position. No, he's not. So there you are. We've only got, just trying to count the contenders on the grid. No, we do have 9. My apologies. It's just that a couple of drivers are out of position. Now they've got into their correct position, so we're okay. The green flag flies to the back of the field. It's a little bit chaotic, but the F4 Australian Championship Race 2 start is about to get underway here at Sepang. Let's race at Sepang International Circuit. Under starters' orders, and Cooper Webster looking to charge forward to the first corner. It's a very exciting start for Bezique. They're in second place. Coming up to the first corner to get a good start out of it. We're going to see a really exciting battle for our contenders as they work their way through the first corners of this race. But what can Thiago Rodriguez do to work his way back into position? Clean start, though, at the front end of the field. And Cooper Webster continues to hold the lead. There goes Thiago Rodriguez working his way back into the race. He's got a lot of work to do from there. But Cooper Webster holds the lead here from Costa Tapares. James Bezique not getting the start he wanted. So as they work their way up the hill for the first time on this course, it is going to be an interesting one. So the competition, a really exciting start then. So the drivers work their way through then on this opening lap as we are going to see an exciting run from Cooper Webster. Can he turn this into a race victory? Certainly looking good at the moment as he charges his way forward. They're in third position. Oh, no, sorry, I thought it might have been a better start from Costa Tapares than it was. It is actually still James Bezique there in second position. So we're going to really get to see now the battle renewed between Cooper Webster and James Bezique. He'll want to pick up another victory after dropping one yesterday. So it's going to be really interesting. But now let's see if we're going to get Cooper Webster to pull well clear now of James Bezique, or will the championship leader be able to hustle him? Certainly there's a bit of daylight between Webster and Bezique at this point. Costa Tapares trying to close up. That's Inigo Anton in the Black Arts car trying to take on his rival there, Nicola Stati. It'll be interesting to see if Inigo Anton can get the move. Now, interestingly, it's already been a note that the race start is under investigation, and even car number 3, Thiago Rodriguez, is under investigation for the start. Now, I don't know whether that's because they've transgressed the rule book in some way to get his car to the starting line in the pit lane. Maybe there's a little technical detail they've missed, but whatever it is, they're certainly under investigation now as Webster leads, Bezique second, then Taparis, Darianani, Starty, Anton, Gilmore, Radburn and Sebastian Amadio, who had a really tricky race start in the same way that he got off the line a little bit hesitantly in the formation lap. And of course, Thiago Rodriguez is several seconds back, starting from the pit lane. He should be a little bit closer to them, but I gather he had problems leaving the pits as well. So he is very lucky to be circulating around the course at all, in my book. So James Bezique sets off after Cooper Webster. The challenge now is to see if he can close him down and go for his 10th win of the season in the 11th race of the year. So certainly Cooper Webster taking advantage of the opportunity, looking set to be the third different winner in F4 Australia this season. Let's see if this can convert into a fantastic run for all of the drivers. But certainly, as things currently stand, no major concerns, no major difficulties for our contenders in the F4 Australian Championship. Webster is your leader, Bezique in second, Taparis in third, in front of Kai Darianani, who's really kicking on a pace here to try and keep up with the top three. Nicholas Starty holding off the attentions of Inigo Anton for the time being. And then we have Seth Gilmore ahead of Imogen Radburn and Sebastian Amadio. Be interesting to see which of the rookies gets the job done between Inigo Anton, Seth Gilmore and Imogen Radburn. We'll try and keep an eye on that battle as well, as we've got a hard-charging Nicholas Starty trying to close up on Kai Darianani and make the move for fourth position. Starty really starting to push on a pace. Let's see if it's going to be an interesting one now to see can Nicholas Starty get the move done here on Kai Darianani. And if he doesn't manage it, Inigo Anton is right there for the taking. So it'll be fascinating to see if there's going to be another charge for him. Kai Darianani running out wide. This could be the chance for Starty. He knows it as he now gets side by side with Kai Darianani down the main straight. So Darianani got it wrong in the final bend, and now he's going to try his best to fend off from Nicholas Starty. Starty trying to come round on the far side into the hairpin to move up. Pick the moment, take it carefully, but he's going to try and hold it. Darianani gets the car out wide. Inigo Anton trying to force his hand on the inside line. Still protecting the inside, Kai Darianani through the sweepers of the first sector and back on the power up the hill. Darianani doing everything he can to fend off from Nicholas Starty. Not easy at this moment as they go wheel to wheel. But Starty has been able to protect his opportunity and go back down the inside line. Darianani cutting him off as they get into the right-hand radius. So still no change then between Darianani and Starty, but you definitely get the impression that Nicholas Starty is getting very frustrated indeed, sat there in position. And Nicholas Starty determined to get past Kai Darianani, still not able to make the bid. So it'll be a really interesting situation for the contenders to see how it all works out. Right, we've got confirmation of the investigation into the start, and I'm afraid there are drive-through penalties handed out for both competitors that had competitors left on the starting grid. That is the number 3, Thiago Rodriguez, and James Bezique. James Bezique is also one of them. So both Thiago Rodriguez and James Bezique are going to get a drive-through penalty here. It's devastating for Thiago Rodriguez, who was already on pole position, but James Bezique, the 93, who is in second place, has also got a drive-through penalty, and that is because they had personnel on the starting grid beyond the 15-second board. That is against the regulations, and so they're going to have to come in for a drive-through. So James Bezique is going to have to come in for a drive-through, as is Thiago Rodriguez. In my book, that is a bit like kicking him out on the floor when he's already got broken ribs. But there's James Bezique driving through pit lane, and he will drop to the back of the field. Wow, that is a big shock here in the Australian F4. And for James Bezique, the man who dominated the first 9 races of the season, he takes a drive-through penalty and falls to the tail of the field. So it's Cooper Webster that leads, Costa Taparis in second, and now it's even more important. It's now even more important for Nicholas Starty to get ahead of Kai Darianani, because essentially this is now a bid for the podium. Well, there is the confirmation then. Car 3 and 93, drive-through penalty because personnel were on the grid beyond the 15-second board. So for Thiago Rodriguez and James Bezique, they both get a drive-through penalty. Now, Thiago Rodriguez, interestingly, has not taken it on this lap. James Physique took it instantly, but Tiago Rodriguez has not taken his drive-through penalty just yet. He's probably trying to communicate with the guys on the pit wall. Why? Why do I have a drive-through penalty? It's bad enough that I'm at the back of the field when I've got the fastest car. Nicolas Stati runs wide. The pressure's on him to get into third position, and he makes the mistake. Inigo Anton, the rookie, is now all over him as they go through the double corner. And Imogen Radburn has got a 5-second penalty, and that's for a false start. Well, that is very unfortunate indeed for Imogen Radburn. It comes up on the graphic on our screen. So that is devastating, as there is now a 5-second false start penalty handed out to Imogen Radburn. Well, that is going to be added to her race time rather than forcing her to make a pit stop. So at least it's not as bad a penalty as it could be, but it certainly denies Imogen Radburn any chance of taking the rookie victory away from Inigo Anton and Seth Gilmore. So the battle is a really intense one for third position, because we've got Kai Dadianani in third ahead of Nicolas Stati, with Inigo Anton in fifth position, suddenly sensing, you know what, I could actually take an overall podium here, as through the pit lane comes Tiago Rodriguez. He'll be absolutely enraged with the way his race has gone. This is one of those issues where if this was iRacing, he'd be hitting the escape board and getting out of his rig and having a drink and calming down. Leo Lamb woke up early today for Tiago Rodriguez's race. What's going on, he says. Well, it's just one of those days, I'm afraid. After his dominant race win yesterday, he just doesn't have the luck to guide him through this one. What a shame. Well, Cooper Webster then is now the leader of the race by 1.9 seconds over Costa Taparis, two men that have raced each other a couple of times in the past. Kai Dadianani is hanging on for third position, and that would be a great result for him as we watch Cooper Webster go up the hill out of turn 5 and looking very comfortable indeed with this. What an opportunity for Cooper Webster. So second place, there is Costa Taparis. What an opportunity for him now as well. There is a track limits warning handed out for the number 33. That is Inigo Anton. He's got to be careful there, because that's the first warning for track limits. If you get too many warnings, by the way, for track limits, you will incur a penalty. And that is when you overshoot the track limits on the circuit. Of course, the old school viewers amongst us will know that the track limits rule is a very simple one. You stay on the circuit. You don't run off the road onto the runoff areas or the curbs. They are there to protect you in an emergency. They're not to be used at full speed to gain an advantage. So the Gap F4 Australian Championship has taken a couple of very big twists here. The two previous race winners, Tiago Rodriguez and James Physique, are at the back of the field, as both men have been handed drive-through penalties for track personnel still being on the starting grid after the 15-second board. Tiago Rodriguez, they struggled to get his car going, and he did eventually start the race from the pit lane. Then he got a drive-through penalty for the 15-second board infringement, just to add insult to injury. And James Physique, the championship leader, the man who won the first 9 races of the F4 Australian Championship in 2024 at the Bend Motorsport Park on 2 separate weekends, and then at Eastern Creek in New South Wales on the Sydney Motorsport Park. Now, well, very dramatic, because now he's at the back of the field in 9th place, desperately trying to catch Imogen Radburn, who herself has a 5-second penalty, and I'm guessing that is for jumping the start. So now James Physique is trying to gain the time to close up on Imogen Radburn. He's not gaining that much. He's gaining about a second, 1.4 seconds per lap. Inigo Anton really threatening Nicolas Stati for 4th position now. Kai Dadianani's got a bit of a gap between them, but this is where Inigo Anton can really hustle Nicolas Stati and put pressure on him. All of the top men in the championship are having a break. Inigo Anton really started to go for it. Not a lot that Nicolas Stati can do to hold him at bay. He holds it for the moment, but Inigo Anton definitely starting to gain the confidence. There's the replay of what happened, and that's why Nicolas Stati essentially drifting wide at the first hairpin. He was very lucky to catch that, and that certainly gives Kai Darianani a little bit of breathing space. He gets a break. So there we go. Big difficulty then for James Physique and Tiago Rodriguez, as their team personnel was left on the starting grid after the 15-second board. That is why they were given a drive-through penalty. because that is against the rules. It's very harsh that it's not the team that suffers half as much as it is the driver that suffers for that one. But those are the rules. Those are in the blue book. First warning for track limits now for the number 24. That is Seth Gilmore of the AGI Sport team. So Seth Gilmore having the problems then. So very interesting situation for Inigo Anton. The rookie driver really has a chance here to go after Nicola Stati and make a bid for the position. It's been a very dramatic race so far after the first 6 laps, and there hasn't even been a spin or an accident of any kind. Drama before the start. Thiago Rodriguez and James Bezique had their team personnel left on the starting grid within the 15-second board threshold. Both got a drive-through penalty for it. Thiago Rodriguez, his team personnel, couldn't get his car started initially on the formation lap, so he didn't do the formation lap. They managed to get his car started, and he took away from the pit lane and then got a drive-through penalty, so that's why he's down in 10th position and why James Bezique is down in 9th. Here's Inigo Anton sizing up Nicola Stati again into the first hairpin. This is up to Nicola Stati to protect. He's really got to protect the position here. 4th position when his main championship rival is in. This is too good an opportunity to waste, and he knows it. He's got to just keep it together. Nicola Stati going for a 4th position. There's the confirmation of what I said earlier about Seth Gilmore. So Seth Gilmore, the number 24, that's his first warning for track limits at 4. You've got to be careful when you run that gauntlet. If you exceed track limits too many times, you're going to get a time penalty. So it's very important that the drivers don't overexude themselves. Cooper Webster, race leader. 2nd, Costa Tapares. 3rd, Kai Dadianani. And Inigo Anton really starting to pressure Nicola Stati at all sorts of parts of the circuit. Into that long, fast sweeper of the left-hander. He made his first proper bid there, hoping to catch out Nicola Stati and hoping to outfox him. But Nicola Stati keeping it together for the time being. 2nd in the championship, as we know. And Nicola Stati, who currently has a points deficit to James Bezique. Coming into this race, there was a fairly decent gap between them. James Bezique had 240 points coming into this race. 153 is what Nicola Stati had. That's a gap of 87 points with just 5 races remaining. But of course, James Bezique can seal the championship in Australian F4 this weekend, whether there is a final race weekend declared or not. Obviously, there is still due to be. But this is the race weekend where James Bezique can become the champion. There are 100 points available after this race. There are 125 points including this race, so there's still a chance for Nicola Stati to make a bit of a catch-up job on James Bezique, providing there is a 5th and final weekend of the championship, as is in the plan. But also, of course, if James Bezique manages to seal the championship before we get to that point, then perhaps there is a little less urgency from the organisers to get that 5th weekend under wraps. There's all sorts of logistical challenges you've got to remember in getting a race weekend sorted out. There's shipping, there's freight, there's transportation, there's hospitality, there's the engineering and the transportation costs of that. It's all an incredible minefield for these race organisers. We just think, oh, all they have to do is drive the things to the circuit and show up and put on a race. No, it is a really difficult challenge to get these races underway. Sebastian Amadio really pressuring Seth Gilmore now, as he wants to fight back and get himself back into the top 6. Amadio's best result this year is an overall podium on 2 occasions at the Sydney Motorsport Park. Last time out, he got the 2 third places. So he really wants to get himself back into the top 6 if he can, and Seth Gilmore is the man to do it. A 2nd track limits warning for Inigo Anton, really putting pressure on Nicola Stati. He's got to be so careful, because even if he gets ahead of Nicola Stati, that's not going to make any difference at all if he gets a track limits penalty. 5 seconds would do it. He's got to be so careful. Nicola Stati currently looking at picking up 12 points. That would put him on 165. James Bezique is down in 9th place and looking at 2 points. That would put him on 242. So that would change the championship a little bit. That would drop the points lead to 77 points. Now, if James Bezique were to gain a few more points, if Nicola Stati were to gain 3 more points on James Bezique in the 3rd and final race of the weekend, then that would keep the championship fight going on to the 5th weekend later on this year. And that would give us a real championship showdown. Even if it was taken in the first race of the weekend, it would still give Nicola Stati that little bit of hope. That's what you're fighting for in this form of racing. You're fighting for the hope. There's Thiago Rodriguez, desperately trying to get back into contention, but he's 15 seconds back from James Bezique alone. So all the Macau fans that were hoping to see Thiago Rodriguez do the double are going to be so disappointed at the end of this race. 7.5 minutes of it still to go. And James Bezique down in 9th, Thiago Rodriguez down in 10th. It looks like he's only going to score an additional point. That would put Thiago Rodriguez level with the score tally of Nicolas Filippetto on 26 points. Not exactly what Thiago Rodriguez had in mind. First warning then for track limits for Kai Darianani. Now he's in 3rd position, Kai Darianani. There he is on the screen. And he's got to be careful because the Evans GP driver does not want to lose a podium by going over the track limits lines. I was commentating on Euro Cup 3 earlier this season at the Red Bull Ring, and you would not believe the amount of drivers that ended up with track limits infringements in that first race. And then, conversely, that ended up with black flags at the end of the race. I think we had 4 or 5 drivers getting black flags at the end because they exerted track limits too much. But it looks to me as though we may be getting some rain filtering through to the circuit. There is Sebastian Amadio. He seems to have dealt with Seth Gilmore, but Gilmore is coming back at him. These two still dueling away for 6th position. It's going to be a really interesting challenge for Gilmore to try and get back past Amadio, but it's not going to happen on this occasion. Right, another track limits warning, this time for Imogen Radburn. She's already had a 5-second penalty for a starting infringement for the false start. She does not need another penalty. We've only got 6 minutes to go. But certainly a good run and a good comeback from Sebastian Amadio here to get ahead of Seth Gilmore. In the background, that's Imogen Radburn trying to close up on Seth Gilmore and take 2nd place in the rookie points. James Bezique, by the way, is now just 3 seconds back from Imogen Radburn. He's done the hard work. Now, it's going to be interesting. How heavy is the rain going to be if it hits the circuit? We know that it's likely to be fairly heavy before the start of race 3. That is the forecast that we've got, but we're getting reports of a couple of drops of rain at various points on the circuit. Now, it doesn't look heavy from what I can see in front of me, so it's definitely going to be intriguing to see if they can keep going all the way through. But if there is a little bit of water to add to this race, then it all becomes part of a very interesting and intriguing battle, because then it becomes about now Thiago Rodriguez. I thought I saw a flash of something for Thiago Rodriguez, but no, it's my imagination on that one. Right, Seth Gilmore hunting down Sebastian Amadio once again. He wants that 6th place back. He wants to challenge Inigo Anton if he gets a penalty, because Anton is 10 seconds up the road. This would be a little bit demoralising, I would have thought, for Seth Gilmore, having been the man on form in the rookies all year long. And then the new boy, Inigo Anton, comes in and suddenly shows them all a clean pair of heels. But certainly Inigo Anton doing his best to run away from the guys behind him in the rookies category and looking very strong with it in 5th position. Here's Sebastian Amadio ahead of Seth Gilmore, 2 drivers that have already run the gauntlet in this race. So let's see how it all continues to challenge. This has been a weekend full of rain as far as I'm concerned. The 3 different events that I've been covering over the course of the weekend have all had rain showers. Here at Sepang, there was a little bit of rain yesterday at turn 7 and at turn 15 in particular, as pointed out by Time Certain Clock on Twitter. Very nicely giving us the information that we needed. We're covering the Brazilian stock cars over in Velo Park as well, and they had a massive amount of rain during Q1 and Q2. And then over at the karting Tillerson T4 Nations Cup at Valencia, it's been raining most of the week, and we had a clear sky yesterday, thank goodness. So it's definitely been a challenging weekend so far for the competitors in Australian F4, but the big news story, if you've only just joined us, is that James Bezique, the man who's won every race in the first 9 races of the year, and who finished 3rd yesterday in race 1, is down in 9th position after his team personnel were left on the starting grid within the 15-second board for the command of the formation lap, and that means that he had to take a drive-through penalty. He's down in 9th place. He could gain a couple of points by getting ahead of Imogen Radburn in the closing stages, and that could eventually seal the championship for him this weekend. Because don't forget, after this race, there will only be 100 points left, and his lead in the championship at this point in proceedings is set to be it's set to be 77 points going into the final 4 races of the year. So if he is able to get through, it would dramatically change the shape of the championship. If it stays like this, the gap will be 242 points to 165 points. So James Bezique will certainly want to get into 8th position ahead of Imogen Radburn, and he's done it. He has done it already. I was so busy looking at the championship standings, I didn't think it would take him that quickly to get ahead of Imogen Radburn, but he's done it. Now, what does that do for the championship? That gives him another 2 points. So that now takes it to 244 compared to 165 for Nicola Stati in 4th place. And that means that the gap at the end of this race would be 79 points. So 79 points for James Bezique with 100 available at the end of this race. All he would have to do is stay within 4 points of Nicola Stati in the 3rd race, and he would become the F4 Australian champion. He was hoping that this race would be the race where he would eventually clinch it, but it's going to be a little bit harder than that now. Here's the replay of the move on Imogen Radburn. Pretty textbook, it has to be said. Lined her up. Radburn's running her own race. She didn't really want to get too heavily involved there in the duel with James Bezique. That would have cost her more time. Now, with the time we've got left, has James Bezique got enough time to close up on Seth Gilmore and gain a few more points? Because that really could seal the deal in the championship. So there is Imogen Radburn, just over a minute to go. But James Bezique has got his eyes set on Seth Gilmore up the road. If he can catch him and pass him before the end, that puts him on 6 points rather than on 4 points. So James Bezique could gain another 2 points, and that would put his lead on 81. So let's see if we're going to have another opportunity for another great challenge here from the man who could become champion today. James Bezique desperately trying to finish the job. There is the race leader though, Cooper Webster. He's only 1.7 ahead of Costa Taparis. He is not going to dominate this race. He's just going to keep it what he needs it to be. Just keeping the lead favourable. 30 seconds less than to go. So this is the penultimate lap, whatever happens. Costa Taparis 2nd, Kai Dadianani 3rd, and it's going to be a very happy podium for those 3. It'll be the 2nd podium of the weekend for Cooper Webster and his first win in only his 2nd appearance in the championship. It'll be a first podium of the year for Costa Taparis, and it'll be a first podium of the year for Kai Dadianani as well. That's what happens when the drama really starts to strike in the Australian F4. Time has run down to 0. So we are now on the penultimate lap as we knew. Webster ahead of Taparis, Dadianani, Stati, Inigo Anton, Sebastian Amadio, Seth Gilmore, James Bezique, Imogen Radburn, and Tiago Rodriguez. Rodriguez is trying to close up on Imogen Radburn himself, but he's still 10 seconds back from her. So devastatingly unlucky for Tiago Rodriguez, not able to really show us what he could do. Here's Nicolas Stati trying to stay ahead of Inigo Anton for 4th position. He could desperately use a podium right now with James Bezique down in 8th position. But I'm afraid it looks to me as though Nicolas Stati is not going to be able to catch Kai Dadianani in the grand scheme of things. So there is the number 8, that is Kai Dadianani in the Evans GP car, running in 3rd position, looking good for his first podium. Just a few hours before he takes his first pole position in Australian F4. He'll be starting race 3 from pole based on the performances in qualifying yesterday. So Kai Dadianani is able to run with the pack all the way to the death. Cooper Webster into the hairpin for the penultimate time. He's got to be careful not to make mistakes like that too often, because Costa Taparis isn't that far away. Into the last lap we go. Cooper Webster with a bit of a gap on Costa Taparis, but it's not done yet. Taparis is still right with him. So it is going to be tight to the end. You've got to keep your wits about you. You've got to stay on it, because Costa Taparis will pick up on any mistakes that you make. And if there are a couple of spots of rain at various points on the circuit, then that could be a real headache for Cooper Webster if he makes an error on the final tour. I think we're going to get away with it on this occasion. The big rain could well be coming later on in the day here at Sepang. But Cooper Webster, 1.6 ahead of Costa Taparis. That will do as long as he keeps it on the black stuff and runs it home to the end. Taparis in 2nd, Kai Dadianani in 3rd. Nicolas Stati looks like he's just going to be able to hang on in front of Inigo Anton. It's not quite as conventional a performance as he would have liked, but certainly a fourth position with his main championship rival in 8th place will do wonders. But James Bezique is right behind Seth Gilmore, so he could pick up another 2 points, and that would make Nicola Starty's task just that little bit harder. So it all comes down to how it will finish off in the grand scheme of things. But certainly now that James Bezique has worked his way to 8th position, he's got a little bit of time to deal with Seth Gilmore. We'll try and pick up on that story before the finish line, but certainly Bezique trying to get that extra couple of points that will almost certainly seal the championship for him in race 3. All he has to do in race 3 is finish ahead of Nicola Starty, and he will be the F4 Australian champion. He's had to do it in an unconventional way with this drive-through penalty. He is in front. He is in front of Seth Gilmore. I can tell you Seth Gilmore's had an incident on the last lap. Seth Gilmore's had a problem. So Seth Gilmore is now down in last position. So that's elevated James Bezique to 7th place. Something's gone wrong for Seth Gilmore. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe we can pick up on a replay later. But certainly for the moment, it's going to be Cooper Webster that takes the victory as he comes out of the final hairpin. Cooper Webster, the Evans GP, will take the victory ahead of Costa Taparis and Kai Dadianani, the 3rd different winner in 3 races in the F4 Australian Championship. Excellent result for Cooper Webster. Excellent result for Evans GP. 2 wins out of 2 so far. Tiago Rodriguez won race 1 yesterday. Cooper Webster wins race 2 today. Can Kai Dadianani get the hat-trick in race 3 from pole position? And there is James Bezique coming home in 6th position. 6th position for James Bezique. Absolutely incredible. He got past Sebastian Amadio and Seth Gilmore at the closing stages there. Well, there was an issue with Seth Gilmore's transponder, but for whatever reason that dropped him to the back. It wasn't correct. So James Bezique comes through for 6th in front of Sebastian Amadio and Seth Gilmore. Imogen Radburn 9th and Tiago Rodriguez a very disappointing and very unhappy 10th place. But what that means for the championship for James Bezique is he's now got one hand on the trophy for this year's championship title. So James Bezique now has 248 points compared to Nicola Starty on 165, and that means his championship lead is 83 with 100 points remaining in this championship fight. All James Bezique has to do is finish ahead of Nicola Starty in the 3rd race, and he becomes the F4 Australian champion of 2024, assuming that we'll have a 5th round later on this year, which is set to be replaced in the calendar. We'll get announcements on it soon, I hope. But based on that, all that James Bezique has to do is finish ahead of Nicola Starty, and he will be the F4 Australian champion. But it's a happy podium. 3 different drivers in the mix there. Cooper Webster, Costa Taparis and Kai Dadianani on the rostrum. Great win for Webster. Great win for Evans GP. Nicola Starty 4th in front of Inigo Anton, the winning rookie. James Bezique, what a comeback after his drive-through penalty. 6th position for him, ahead of Sebastian Amadio, Seth Gilmore and Imogen Radburn. Tiago Rodriguez was just a second away from picking up a 9th place off Imogen Radburn. As far as the championship is concerned, that means the gap is just 87 points with 100 available at the end of this race. Here are the highlights of a very intriguing race. Unfortunate start there for Sebastian Amadio. Amazing that he was able to then continue on with the race and work his way further back into the battle. It was a crazy race in the end for Tiago Rodriguez. Not only did he have to start from the pit lane, he also picked up a drive-through penalty, so couldn't rejoin the race after his team personnel was left on the starting grid. So too was the AGI Sport driver, James Bezique. He had the same problem. So just like Tiago Rodriguez, he had to take a drive-through penalty as well. So those two dropped down. Bezique had to fight to work his way back into position, worked his way up to P6 in the end, and gained valuable championship points in the process. But the victory went the way of Cooper Webster in front of Costa Taparis and Kai Dadianani. First win for Webster, first podiums for Taparis and Kai Dadianani. And Nicola Starty finishing 4th with James Bezique in 6th means that all that James Bezique needs to do is finish ahead of Nicola Starty in the 3rd race of the weekend, and he will be the F4 Australian champion. So there you have it. That is your roundup from race 2 in the F4 Australian Championship. Sadly, we cannot stay around for the podium ceremony because the race weekend schedule is pretty hectic here at the Sepang International Circuit. But a congratulations to our drivers, to Cooper Webster in the victory, to Costa Taparis in second, and to Kai Daryanani in third. Two different Evans GP drivers take victory then in the first two races of the weekend. Tiago Rodriguez won yesterday. Cooper Webster has won today in race two. Their third driver, Kai Daryanani, will start race three from pole position. Can the three Evans GP drivers pick up victories this weekend? And more importantly, can James Bezique clinch the title to become the 2024 F4 Australian champion? Join us for race three later when we'll find out. I'm Jake Sanson. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. We'll see you later for race three.